Good evening, everybody. It's Steve with Real Progressives. We got a little bit different gear tonight. I'm test driving this thing out here on the porch with the frogs and with the birds and with all the other stuff that I normally do in my solo rants. And tonight is going to be a special show with Ellis, of course. I'm going to bring him on momentarily. Before we get started, I want to talk about something that happened a little bit ago. There was a fake Green News Network that had run a video basically smearing MMT, smearing myself, etc. And it is actually, so anyone that watched it knows, it is absolute 100% not from the Green Party. It is from a jerk-off that stole their name, tried to even fight with them about patents and everything else. I won't even mention his name because it's not worth it, but I want you to be aware that was absolutely not the Green Party that did this. All right. So tonight, without further ado, I want to go over real quickly what we're going to talk about, and then I'm going to bring Ellis on real quickly. We're going to be talking about, can MMT exist without the job guarantee? And basically, for everyone else to understand the necessity of pegging our economy to a labor standard within the United States to help ensure that we, as the 99%, are able to, in fact, live a life more abundant. So without further ado, let me bring on Sir Ellis. Ellis, welcome to the show, sir.
How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing well, sir. I'm doing well. So talk to me, Ellis. Can MMT exist without the job guarantee? I think it exists, but can it reach its full potential without it?
Well, I've heard this before about, MMT being, you can have MMT without the job guarantee. First off, a bit of clarification on that. I think it's always fun to clarify this, and it's very important. MMT is not something that you go out and get, okay? And it's not something that you need to figure out a way to have, okay? MMT is just a description, as we've talked about this many times. It just describes the monetary system as it is today. It's what already exists. So in that sense, yes, you can have, you can accurately describe the monetary system without talking about the job guarantee. But MMT itself is also a framework, all right, for understanding the economy. So this framework itself, which translates directly into appropriate macroeconomic policy, requires a job guarantee. And the reason for that is because there's this widely accepted notion. This is one of the major reasons. There's this widely accepted notion out there in the profession. All right, in the economics profession, I should say, and amongst the population, thanks to politicians and the media, that there's this trade-off between unemployment and inflation. And the thing that I believe non-professionals like the layperson, the activists, the general public need to understand, they must understand, is that this trade-off nonsense, it must be concluded. It has to stop if there's ever going to be any progress, because there really is no trade-off between unemployment and inflation.
So let's talk about that for a second, because that has me as an activist really, really flustered. Because, as you know, we get lots of people, especially within the Marxist left, the folks that don't fully understand MMT, that try to take their religion and shove it in to fit what we're saying instead of listening what we're saying, so we can see how the new truth of our existing modern system can facilitate all of the things that they want as well. And so because they look at it as if the Lord and Savior Karl Marx spoke it into the catechisms of Marxism, they can't understand money creation. They refuse to accept money creation. They refuse to accept the basics of how the money system works. So they impose things about capital flight. They impose things about labor value theory, nonsense that really, at the end of the day, prevents them from understanding that we're not talking Calvinism. We're not talking about make work. We're not talking about anything that's going to be a conflict with automation. We're not talking about any of that stuff. We're talking about things that people genuinely do not understand, refuse to understand, largely because religious beliefs founded in their own version of Marx Volume 1 as opposed to Volume 2, etc. These folks have decidedly only bit off a portion of their understanding, and then everything thereafter is a feels-based system. They are not listening to the science behind MMT and why a federal job guarantee is so vital. Can you elaborate on that, Ellis?
Marxists tend to view money in a different way. They like to view money, what's the best way you could put it for a general audience? They like to view money as a private thing. And it's problematic to them, it causes all sorts of trouble, and it's something that needs to be, like, abolished, got rid of, you know. And MMT tries to explain that currency is issued by a sovereign currency issuing government. It's state money, you know, and it comes from the state. And Marxists tend to reject that notion, because they just don't like the concept of money. Some of them just don't, you know. They view it as a, you know, a thing of capitalism that needs to be destroyed, replaced, you know, move on with socialism and whatnot. Not all Marxists are problematic. I think I remember the very first time, Stephen, when you phoned me to ask me if I would be interested in doing an interview with you. It took 2 phone conversations. Remember that? I think I made it very, very clear to you where I stood on Marx, that I come, my economics start at Marx, and then what did I say? Straight to who? Okay, so you know, I can relate. I can relate to Marxists in many ways, and you know, Marxism is very relevant to MMT. A lot of the teachings, a lot of the insights of Karl Marx are very valuable. But the thing is this, the truth is that we have a currency that's issued by the federal government. And in the UK, you have a currency that is issued exclusively by the government of the United Kingdom. And there's no amount of wishing or begging or guessing or demanding else other than that is going to change this. And the simple fact is that the capitalist is not as powerful as it once were under a fixed exchange regime. The government has total control as a currency issuer and the regulatory authority to do what it must to ensure the public purpose and to ensure a state of perpetual full employment. The reason why the government doesn't is because politicians themselves are bought and paid for, you know, to not have these things. It's a very simple concept to understand. We just simply, in this case, need to separate politicians from the government, the institution that is government, okay? The government issues the currency. It issues the dollar, and its job as a currency issuer is to deal with the public purpose, because it's a public institution. It's not a private institution, so it should only be concerned with the public purpose. In this case, that's full employment, you know, and public purpose spending, you know, healthcare, right? So infrastructure. So really the whole thing is not to worry so much about money and getting rid of it and, oh, it must be a private thing, because it's not. You know, there is, you know, commercial bank money, you know, IOUs and whatnot. But in the hierarchy, the dollar, which is issued by the US government, is supreme. And if we could just come to this kind of an understanding and agree on it, we could open up a lot of doors here in the heterodox community. You know, but I guess, you know, in most cases, like the orthodoxy, the heterodoxy, lots of the heterodoxy, see, the heterodoxy community seems to be perfectly happy being delusional about this and the implications of sovereign currency issuing governments. You know, there you have it.
You know, for me, having been through the mill many times with these people. I call them full cups, because if you're a full cup and you try to put anything into a full cup, it just spills on the floor. It's useless, right? You can't fill a full cup. So people that are full cups often come into these arrangements with their religion. And these people call us a cult. We're sitting here describing science, because MMT would describe AMI if that was the crazy system that our government decided to adopt. MMT would suddenly be able to describe AMI, and it wouldn't talk about millions of possibilities. It would talk about the shortcomings thereof. But the reality is that people do not understand that MMT is that currency analysis of exactly what is going on.
Yeah, it's just taking what we already know exists. You know that a damn US dollar exists, okay? So now let's examine that. Let's not worship false market gods and play with little models that are based in fantasy. Let's look at the dollar. How does it enter the economy, okay? How does it flow through the economy? And how does it leave the economy, all right? It's a very simple thing. You analyze it.
Let's talk real quickly about something that we have gone over probably a million times for the uninitiated that haven't been around, because there are people that, because they hang around in circles that don't understand economics, they say things, they read Ron Paul, they watch Peter Schiff at 3 a.m., they say really silly things, okay, abominable things, mind you, things that are literally life-sucking. I'm going to put one such comment up here on the board for us to discuss momentarily. This guy, Lou Novak, thinks he's getting us here. He's like, supreme in the U.S., globally, forever? How about you talk about those shortcomings? And, he's probably got a really good point there, Ellis, doesn't he?
Supreme what?
The U.S. dollar is supreme in the United States.
Yes, it is.
And you say, what is it, supreme in the globe forever? In other words, coming collapse kind of stuff. Talk about that.
Look, when I go to the UK, okay, and when I go to the UK, I get off in London and I travel upwards to Middlesbrough, okay, I can't find anybody up there that's using US dollars to buy goods and services. And that's because the currency of the United Kingdom is not the US dollar, okay? The currency of Canada is not the US dollar. The currency of Japan is not the US dollar. The currency of Australia, do I have to keep going? I mean, really, the currency of Australia is not the US dollar. Okay? These governments issue their own currency, and they are quite capable of addressing problems in their own domestic economies. Okay? They have full authority. So even if, in a case of trade, which this is just silly to talk, I mean, this is really silly. But in the case of, let's just say the rest of the world decided that it didn't want US dollars, okay? So what is it going to do to resolve this problem? We don't want any more US dollars over here. All right, well, then it will stop exporting its goods and services. In other words, it will stop exporting its nation's production to the US, okay? And the current account deficit in the US will evaporate. That's the end of it. Nothing else. It just means that the US won't be importing anything anymore because the rest of the world's not interested in saving in US dollar-denominated assets. That's all that means, okay? We simply import more than we export because the rest of the world thinks that it's a great thing to take their production and just give it to the people of the United States in exchange for these bits of paper that the US government alone issues, called the US dollar. Actually numbers, whatnot. And so the dollars leave American consumers' hands and they go to foreign hands, and that's it. And they save them. And in the majority of cases, the dollars themselves never leave the US. They sit in an account at the Federal Reserve. This is nonsense. There's nothing to worry about. This is apocalyptic thinking. All right, and I do have something to say about it about apocalyptic thinking before the show's over. I should just say it now. I do not listen to anyone, professional or otherwise, who says anything about economics that's got doom attached to it, or collapse, or calamity, or Armageddon attached to it, because I'm going to be blunt. You're peddling bullshit. I do not listen to anyone who tells me we can't because. There is no we can't. We can do whatever the hell we need to do and whatever the hell we want to do. Why? Because it's not about the money. It's about the nation's resources, the real resources. The US has vast resources. So because of that, the US government has to issue enough dollars in order to access those resources in the form of output, production. Okay, this has nothing to do with what Germany thinks of the dollar or France thinks of the dollar. Okay, I'm 50 years old, and the 50 years I've been over this I've been in this for 20 years. I can't tolerate. I just literally make fun of people, and I make fun of anything when people are, oh, we're all going to die. You've heard me say that before. We're going to get inflation, and we're all going to die. That's my favorite thing. Or the entire eastern seaboard of the United States is going to collapse into the Atlantic Ocean if the government spends one more dollar. It's just ridiculous. This Armageddon crap needs to stop because you can't have progress saying I can't. Okay, we can't. We can't. Well, then how do you want progress to occur? Well, I'm for progress. I'm progressive here. I'm a progressive. If you're a progressive, then let's do this. Oh, I can't because I can't afford it. Well, then how do you expect to do progress? There's no progress emanating from the phrase, we can't. What the hell's wrong with you? Right? So you're going to spend the rest of your days pretending to be a progressive, but telling everybody we can't do that. We can't do this. We can't do that. We can't do this.
Conservatives. Nothing but conservatives.
Only conservatives say we can't.
That's right.
And the only reason why they say they can't is because they don't want to. You know?
So hold on. Hey, Ellis, let's talk about something here real quick because we have a show to do, and that's on the job guarantee and why it's vital. But I do want to touch on something. Okay,
well, you know, I'm flexible, right?
Well, I know you are. You're a flexible currency regime. All right, so
a very flexible currency arrangement.
Here's the deal, because I have like so little tolerance for people that throw out non sequiturs in the chat, like, what about cryptocurrencies and stuff like that? So I want to hit this myself. The bottom line is the United States does not have a cryptocurrency. Period. Full stop. Does not have a cryptocurrency. It has the US dollar. And because it has the US dollar, it alone can provide single-payer health care. It alone can do away with student debt. It alone can be the primary investor into green energy to save our environment.
But you know why that is. You know why that is. Tell them why that is. Sorry, I didn't mean.
No. It's okay. I'm just out of my flipping mind.
Yeah, look, the reason why is because you can't retire student loan debt because it's denominated in US dollars, not Bitcoin. Okay? And Bitcoin is just a payment system. It's not a currency. Okay?
But this is what plagues our movement, and this is why people have to die in our movement.
All right, look, it's real simple. Student loan debt. How do you still have student loan debt, Stephen?
I have 127,000 of it.
127,000 what? Canadian dollars? Yen?
No, US dollars, buddy.
US dollars? So how do you satisfy that debt? With Japanese yen?
No, I guess I would have to come up with some sort of Bitcoin.
No, you come up with US dollars. Just like when you wander down to the greengrocers, the supermarket, and you want to buy a banana in the United States, the bananas are not priced they're not priced in British pounds. They're not priced in Bitcoin. They're priced in US dollars for a reason, because that's what is accepted. Okay, so you can't retire student loan debt and all this crap with it's just nonsense. You just need US dollars. And where do they come from? The fucking US government. This is not very hard to understand. Okay? They don't come from rich people. The rich.
I want to interject something here real quick from our friend Dr. Stephen Hale, who wrote this just as we went live. So I figured this would be of some merit. He says, if you're a central banks are owned by evil bankers person, and you must track down my office phone number and ring me at work to tell me I don't know what I'm talking about and MMT is a religion, please make sure you've done your homework first. even the mildest of us can lose our patience when someone keeps repeating rubbish. When they aren't interested in any evidence, that is rubbish. When they think that what is demonstrably true and not faith-based at all is a religion, and no disrespect intended to religions. And when I have only just started my morning coffee, I had to terminate the conversation somewhat abruptly. Now I am grumpy and have to set some assignments. There's no time to be setting assignments. So bottom line here is I just want everybody to understand, because it's very important. Lou, I'm going to have to boot you from this live stream here in a minute, just so you understand. No offense, but other people are here to actually learn, and you're sidetracking people, okay? So we're going to go ahead, and we're going to find a way to get through this live stream going now. But I just wanted to make sure folks understand that the central bank is a creature of Congress, and it is private within the government in terms of it's like an ingress and an egress. It has public components, it has private components, but it is 100% public purpose, and it is 100% a creature of Congress, and is 100% beholden to, if Congress says spend the damn money, guess what happens? It spends. Government checks don't bounce, as Mosler would say.
Right.
So, all right, moving forward. Ellis?
I'd like to say thank you to my friend Stephen Hale there for posting that.
Absolutely.
Because it captures reality very well. It captures what I have to deal with. I mean, I've dealt with things like this before, and it's absolute. You know, at some point you lose your patience. You know, what's to be expected from me? I mean, I use foul language nonstop now nowadays. You know, but anyway, off you go.
Yeah, we're going to have to sideline a few folks that I think are sidelining the education. But let's just jump right in to the point of the actual the job guarantee as it stands. Why is it so vital to MMT?
We're talking about why people believe in this. Well, we were talking about, I think where we left off was the, we left off with the trade-off. Yeah, that was what we left off with, the trade-off.
Yes.
And why people have to stop believing that there is a trade-off. Because if they don't, then progress is just not possible. Well, it's not going to make progress. They keep believing in this trade-off between unemployment and inflation. Okay. And what drives that is there's this thing in the economics profession called the Phillips curve. All right, I'm pretty sure you've heard of it. I know Stephen's heard of it. And the Phillips curve says that the rate of unemployment is inversely related to the rate of inflation, or in common language of everyday people, it basically says this: you can't have full employment without getting inflation, and if you have full inflation or full employment, you'll get inflation and we'll all die. Okay, so that's it. Everybody's scared to death of inflation, you see. And so this Phillips curve argues that there's this trade-off between unemployment and inflation. And furthermore, I point out that this ties in with the Naira nonsense, the non-accelerating inflation rate of unemployment. We've talked about this before, and it's prevailed over the last 40 some odd years. See, workers have expectations and business has expectations. So when you have a situation of actual full employment where output is like approaching maximum, all right, both sides will tend to fight to claim a share of GDP, national income. So what you're told is that, to use the political message, okay, what you're told in politics is this. The story goes this way. The political story, that is. The problem always starts with the workers, right, in these situations, because as we know, workers are under the influence of Satan, right? And labor under the influence of Satan becomes selfish and evil to the core and hates business, right? Which business collectively represents the angels of the all-wise market God, right? And as the fight between evil and good progresses, okay, this fight manifests itself through wage demands, price markups, Wage pressures will begin to build between different groups of labor, and wage price pressures build, generating inflation. Okay, so good so far. Now, if government does not join the fight and act on behalf of business to reduce aggregate demand and unemploy millions of workers, then we will all die. So that's the story. That's the story of Fed. Okay. So what government does, government would then reduce aggregate demand. And when unemployment begins to rise to a level high enough to cause poverty, misery, despondency, and cause suicide rates to shoot up, okay, then we're told that the expectations of business and workers come together in joyous agreement. Okay. Isn't that wonderful? Claims on real income are shared once again in the spirit of brotherly love between both parties. Satan is defeated and inflationary pressures are attenuated. Therefore, to avoid this mess altogether, the government must simply maintain a pool of workers in a state of unemployment in perpetuity to fight inflation. Okay? So to quote Dave Mustaine here, nice story, tell it to Reader's Digest, because I have no time for that bullshit. Nairu basically tells you in no uncertain terms that we simply cannot have actual full employment because we will get accelerating inflation as a result. And the truth is that the job guarantee, okay, renders that nonsense totally inert. It just wipes it away. It just shoves it off.
Yeah, let me ask you a question, Ellis. Given the fact that the U.S. doesn't issue Bitcoin and you can't pay your taxes in Bitcoin, and no government program is funded by Bitcoin, and absolutely no ability whatsoever to do anything, why do you suppose people within the progressive, is it the Dungeons and Dragons culture, or is it just people that don't actually want to save lives? They just think it's cool hanging out, talking, and I
really don't know.
Smoking a cigarette or something.
There's nothing that you can put your finger on that would encompass everyone. It seems like the orphanages, the orphan politics thing I was talking to you about.
Yeah, it's pathetic.
The progressives and the left, the old left, it tends to like to separate and segregate itself by issues. And those become most important, And it seems like the only thing that they can agree on when it comes to economics is that the rich need to be taxed because the government's broke. And the reason why the government's broke is because it was designed by the founding fathers never to have money. Okay, so by design, it's broke. And it has to tax and borrow to get money so that it can spend, And that's about as far as they're willing to go. And then they want to talk about, protecting animals and protecting the environment, but then they don't know exactly how to go about it. But they do think that they can make the world a better place if only their one particular pet issue is addressed. And so there's a million reasons. There could be a million reasons why progressives just, some of them just prefer, like liberals, prefer to just complain and whine. And if you took away that, if you made things better and you initiated a situation of prosperity and perpetuity, they don't have little to complain about, right? So, I mean, you're taking away everything that's meaningful to them. Other people, I don't know. I've given up on trying to figure these people out. I concern myself over the past several years. I've been slowly just concerning myself with people who are interested in learning. Okay,
that's right. And you know what? I had that revelation tonight, Ellis.
Finally, after I've been telling you over and over.
I know, but I always want people to get it because I want to save lives. You know what I mean? And so when I see this in our movement, and I see these disgusting trolls that exist that talk about Bitcoin when we're talking about saving lives, sidetracking people, sidelining them away from learning how to actually activate on the real shit, not some little sidebar transaction system. Don't get me wrong. I have nothing against Bitcoin, but it's not what we're talking about. If you're here to talk about saving lives, this is the place to do it. If you're here to sit there and saunter about your Dungeons and Dragons club, rolling a +20 die to figure out whether or not you got an extra blip on your Bitcoin, it's not the place to do it. It's just not. But I sat there today and I looked at my son as I was pushing him on the swing. And I realized that unless we get this movement together and people stop getting sidetracked and stop getting diverted into a bunch of bullshit, we literally are going to see an uninhabitable planet. We are literally going to see animals and species die off in mass extinctions. We are absolutely going to see people never get Medicare for all. People are still going to be committing suicide because they don't have a job. They're going to be committing suicide because they don't have their student loans retired. And they're going to be committing suicide because they see no hope. But these people feel compelled to absolutely destroy progress by sidelining people with this bullshit. So for me, I decided tonight, after tonight, because I have to speak in front of the Green Party on Thursday, I decided that I was not going to entertain them. And unfortunately, with the way the setup is, we get to see all the comments stroll through. So it's hard to just, ignore it, because there's a lot of good comments out there too by quality people doing quality things, enhancing society by actually participating and paying attention and not sidelining people. But there are those who intentionally sideline people with this nonsense, and it is absolutely the death of the poor. The people that really need help are being killed one by one by these people that sideline the conversation. And I just want them to know I think they're a murderer by proxy. So there's that. I don't know what else to say, Ellis. I really don't. So, I really don't. I mean, I seriously, I look at this and I say to myself, we have to have, it's 45,000 people a year commit suicide due to lack of jobs.
Yeah, 1 in 5.
45,000 people commit suicide.
1 in 5 suicides is unemployment related. Yeah.
It's horrible. And we can't even talk about it because people want to talk about Bitcoin. Anyway, so back at the ranch. Let's get down to this here real quickly, okay? Yeah. So we've already talked about some of the reasons. We've got the UBI only crowd that doesn't really know economics. They're religious people. They've bought into their religion. They don't understand that UBI on its own is not only status quo, but it's inflationary. And it's like a hand up to the capitalists. It's doing it because if everybody gets this amount of money, okay, there's no output being done. So the one thing that does cause inflation that we've talked about is not printing the money, not too much money printed. It's too much money chasing too few goods. In other words, we have a demand. There's a demand resource crunch. We have no resources for the things people want. Now, all of a sudden, we're screwed. And so what happens with school voucher systems, for example? School vouchers, everybody gets their $2,500. Here, go find a school to go to. Well, naturally, the low schools, which nobody wants to go to, that are the bad schools, will fit right into that $2,500 bucket. But then there's the $5,000 school that the wealthy will take the $2,500 voucher, and they will take and match that $2,500 or more and send their kids off to whatever school they want. So what they've done is, in essence, given more money to the capitalists. They've done nothing for the people whatsoever. And at the end of the day, they've sidelined people that want to get a job. And so that's the problem. I have no problem, quite frankly, I have no problem with some form of UBI and JG, job guarantee combo, but that's not the issue here. Tonight, we're talking about why the JG is an imperative for MMT.
Yeah. It's too bad that we couldn't put up that image that I posted this week from Pally, his 2013 critique of MMT. Very disingenuous thing there. But in furtherance of what we were talking about here, about the Phillips curve trade-off thing, to get you a little bit more in-depth information about why I posted it. I posted this, and anyone remember this? I forgot what I said. Anyone remember this? And I said it's not worth the waste of written English or something, because it's a very disingenuous paper. It was a very disingenuous paper when he wrote it. What he did was, it was page 16 and 17 of this critique that he had in 2013, where he said that he referenced the Phillips curve trade-off as an argument against MMT. And like I said, in doing so, he was being very disingenuous, which, is me putting it rather kind for someone like me to say disingenuous, and that's all I'm saying, you know. I'm being rather kind. See, there's an extensive body of MMT literature out there that addresses his argument, and there was, at the time he wrote this paper, okay, he wrote this critique. What he seemed to do is either totally ignore this extensive body of MMT literature concerning the job guarantee, or he read it and chosen not to acknowledge it, defining it in his paper as MMT's boilerplate language about concern with inflation, which again means that he ignored the literature. And that literature clearly and more than adequately addresses his concern. And that concern was the sector-specific bottlenecks that occur in supply chains just prior to full employment. All right, so for the uninitiated, what I'm talking about here is when you approach full employment, you have bottlenecks in supply chains that will begin to occur in different sectors of the economy, okay? And they occur at different times and at different levels, okay? So this means that before full employment can be achieved, inflationary pressures are going to rise. See, so thus the Phillips curve trade-off is held by the profession as an unassailable barrier to achieving full employment and maintaining it in perpetuity. All right. So, you know, it was really bad about this paper of his. Never mind. I just continue on where I was at. But he had what he had done. But had he had done, excuse me, had he had done what any respectable researcher or professional or scientist even, yeah, had he even done what these people would do, he would have considered all of the literature. This is what I want to say. He would have considered the new developments that were present, all right? Meaning, had he not brazenly ignored the extensive MMT literature on the subject, he wouldn't have been able to argue on the grounds of the Phillips curve trade-off, because the job guarantee vacates the Phillips curve. And when I say that, what I mean is that it renders it obsolete, at least from this perspective here, about the trade-off. The trade-off's obsolete, all right? And this reality turns the economic profession's deeply held religious beliefs. This goes back to what Stephen Hale said. You know, you read his thing at the beginning there, that post that it threatens the economic profession's deeply held religious beliefs regarding macroeconomics, and it turns them upside down. All right. And, you know, these days it seems that people have digested MMT literature on this subject, but for some reason or another decided that since there's no way around it, they'll just, I don't know, fundamentally alter the accepted view that we have of excess demand within the profession simply to justify arguments against the job guarantee because they know it works. They know the job guarantee works, and it would work. So put simply and bluntly, as Stephen Hale rightly said, the job guarantee allows us to overcome the Phillips curve trade-off, and that offends these people's deeply held religious beliefs in the profession.
So, Ellis, when you were talking earlier about the need for us to have basically a job guarantee, we already kind of have a job guarantee in the United States now, in the military, if you will.
It is
folks,
kind of,
you know, folks,
not the same.
It's not the same, but young men and women are trading their lives for things that should be rights already: jobs, healthcare, what do you call it? Education, all these things that should be staples of American citizenship. Instead of having to go and take a chance, roll the dice, find out if you're going to be the guy on the front lines to die.
Right.
We have a different perspective on that with the job guarantee here as well. Can you talk a little bit about why not only the military is not a quality job guarantee, but the difference between the two, and why we need a public purpose driven job guarantee?
Well, the military itself is basically a government program that has to operate for the defense of the nation, but it should not be what a currency issuing government offers as employment of last resort. Okay? I mean, we've got a lot of things that we need to do in this country that capitalism simply, the private sector simply can't address or won't because it's not profitable. You know, Pavlina's talked about this, building nature trails, preserving wild habitats. Yeah, we have to clean up urban blight. We've got, you know, was Warren Mosler saying, there's infinite ways that we can serve one another. So there are infinite jobs that can be created. Okay, the military is ridiculous as an option for employment of last resort, especially for a currency issuing government like the US. It's just stupid, especially when you have all this output that's been going to waste for 40 years. Productive capacity just sitting idle. Come on. This is just you have two choices, dude. You can either starve, live in poverty, and join the military. That's just dumb. You know, and it serves neoliberalism's purposes very well because we can advance forth into other nations and open up markets. All right? And your sons and daughters can die for that. That's just not a job guarantee. All right?
Well, take a second here. I want to show a very important political point to this that should resonate with progressives, but yet seemingly doesn't with some anyway. They say we got to end wars. We've got to end wars for oil. We've got to end the military industrial complex. We got to slash and burn, blah, blah, blah. The military is the employer of last resort right now, largely. It really is. And when you think about that, and you make this offer that we would actually allow local communities to determine what it is that they value, not automation bullshit, not the robots are coming, not any other mindless drivel, okay? The local communities determine what they value. In a democratic way, the local communities, okay, determine what things they would like to see done in their local community. And then the federal government would provide the funds for that job guarantee. Wow. Seems like a no-brainer. However, progressives, for whatever reason, can't figure this out. And it blows my mind. It drives me crazy. I have a son getting ready to go into the military because he doesn't have options. That is infuriating to me. And I look at the progressive community who like literally hijacks that with this UBI nonsense, and it causes me sickness. It causes me to rage. It causes me to look around to see if there's a smarter group out there to bond with to try and take this country over. Because when I hear that nonsense, I realize people are religious entities. They don't want to deal in this stuff. But here we are. We've painted out an incredible, life-fulfilling, take Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We're talking about self-actualization, etc., redefining what work is. And this is the political side again. This is not the macroeconomic truth that you're talking to. This is the bring it all together for the people in the movement to understand that they are literally condemning people to death in the military. And without the military, millions of people would be without jobs. And there would be tons and tons of despair at the expense, granted, of a war machine. But we have choices, and they refuse to listen because somebody on some infomercial told them something about robots. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, you mentioned here right before you started talking about that, you said that we kind of have a job guarantee. And we do. I say it in a sarcastic way, okay? Because I like to give the middle finger to neoliberalism. We do have a job guarantee in the US and in other countries too, albeit a shitty job guarantee. It's what I've said before. I've made this point many times over the years to the chagrin of those who adore this trade-off nonsense that we're talking about, that maintaining a certain level of unemployment in perpetuity is in fact a job guarantee just without pay. It's a buffer stock of unemployed persons, okay? So in this case, what the government does is the government employs them, meaning it uses them. It uses the unemployed. So it employs them to just sit there. That's their job, to just sit there and be poor, okay, to fight non-existent inflation and to do so without pay. All right? So all it is a pool of workers is maintained, and these workers can do whatever they wish They could go fishing, or they could sit there and starve to death, and they can look for jobs that aren't there. Wonderful, whatever. But they're not going to be paid for it. Okay? And you will notice, though, that since the early 80s, okay, inflationary pressures are non-existent. There's, since that time, there's not really been anything to do with accelerating inflation. It's not there. Okay? And if the private sector were to begin to inflate, all right, the government would reduce aggregate demand, and workers who have jobs would suddenly be out of jobs, and they would transfer from the private sector into a pool of unemployed workers. See that? So, point in fact, neoliberalism has been running a job guarantee now for over 40 years. Inflation nowhere to be found, and so we know that a job guarantee works. What MMTists propose to do is simply pay these workers to actually do something socially productive, okay? Socially productive, something beneficial for the local communities. Actually paying these workers is one thing that, people like the business leader, they don't like that idea. But what the business leader, and certainly neoliberalism, will not tolerate is full employment, okay? And it is high time, all right, Stephen? It's high time that people understand and accept that the very reason why society is in the mess that it is right now, along with the economy, it has everything to do with the end of full employment 40 years ago, all right? And the resulting long-term unemployment and wage suppression, not the age of robots or good jobs leaving for foreign countries or globalism. Look, if you are serious about real change and achieving prosperity and maintaining it in perpetuity, then this kind of nonsense simply must stop. It has to stop. We have to stop thinking in terms of religious dogma about there being a trade-off between unemployment and inflation. And I can't, we can't, you can't, nobody can do this. I can't stand the word can't, because it's nonsense. We can do whatever the hell we want to do. All right? So if you want to achieve prosperity and actually maintain it, you're going to have to drop this trade-off nonsense. All right? And you're going to have to focus on what matters. What matters is you have a government that issues the US dollar. It's purposefully and deliberately being forced by politicians to short the supply of dollars in the economy, and that is resulting in high unemployment. Okay? It's resulting in high levels of private debt because politicians are also very happy for the financial sector to help them out in any way possible. All right? It's resulting in output loss forever. It's resulting in production capacities just laying there idle and falling apart. It's resulting in an infrastructure that's falling apart. And every last one of these things, the fate of these things, is not necessary. It's not something that we just have to live with or we have to come to terms with. We're just going to have to watch as the infrastructure collapses, Stephen. We'll have to come to terms with poverty. It's natural. There's nothing natural about poverty. There's nothing natural about unemployment. It is a politically manufactured thing. End of story.
Absolutely. All right. So, Ellis, let's take the next step here. Obviously, some of the things that drive our understanding of a currency issuing nation like Japan, who is far exceeding us in terms of actual productivity.
No, have you seen their debt to income rate? Have you seen their debt to GDP ratio? The whole island's going to catch fire and sink into the sea.
Well, it's unfathomable to me that people that want to talk about economics and want to say, well, what about the rest of the world? They don't look at these things. Why they don't do it, I can only guess. I think one of two reasons. Number one, they really don't understand economics and they're sidelining people. Or two, it doesn't serve their narrative and they've got ulterior motives. Those are the only two choices I see that are viable in that. Because honest to God, you look at Japan. Japan is a monetarily sovereign nation. They have their own central bank. They have debt out the wazoo. I mean, what is it, like 250% or more even? I think it's even more than that.
Japan's The Walking Dead.
And you look at this, though, and you think to yourself, why would people feel compelled to speak confidently and like with authority about debt and deficits when it comes to these things, when they really don't understand what the hell they're talking about.
Because
I would think they'd be spending a lot more. What's that?
Because they're fucking idolaters. That's why. They idolize politicians. They idolize politicians, and then their favorite politician that they love and they adore and they worship at the feet of says, debt to GDP ratio. And they never stop to think, does that even make sense? The debt to GDP ratio, stocks, flows. They don't even think that. They just think, oh, well, yes, of course. Whatever he says is truth. Whatever she says is truth. And that's it, you know. And if you say, no, here's the truth, you are offending their God. You are offending their celebrity, favorite celebrity. You're offending them. And they worship at the feet of this celebrity politician. This is our leader, Stephen. It's our leader. You're insulting my team. You're on the other team. This team spirit bullshit. That's what modern politics has become. It's just become a bunch of team spirit bullshit, and nobody knows what the fuck they're talking about. Nobody knows their asshole from their elbow. I mean, really, it's just all team spirit. But yet, in a common everyday outside of politics, in the home, in the kitchen, in the garage, they're quite capable of making rational decisions. But the moment you hear Obama say, the truth is that $1 of capital in a bank can result in $8 to $10 worth of loans, resulting in a faster pace of economic growth, people go, yeah, that's true. How the fuck do you know? What do you know about bank operations? I mean, what? How do you know? Well, Obama said so. He's the president. He's my president. He would know, otherwise he couldn't be president. I've checked the Constitution, all right? I've checked it many times, and I'm telling you the truth now. There is nothing about, under the qualifications necessary to become president of the United States, there's nothing about understanding bank operations. Okay?
Absolutely. Hey, okay, so let's take a step back for just a second, Ellis. You know, as we look at what we're up against, right? I mean, we have a nation that has been lied to. Stephanie Kelton, folks, if you follow Stephanie Kelton on Twitter, her pinned post at the top of her Twitter feed has a remarkably funny, once the light's on anyway, okay? It's probably not funny for those who are not initiated into understanding MMT. But for those who understand how finance actually works, they have a 2-minute video where it basically shows everyone from Obama saying, take out a credit card from the People's Republic of China. And we have Bill Clinton saying, this terrible deficit. And we have Bernie Sanders saying, it's immoral. We got to get rid of the deficit. And then you've got each one of them.
Every fiscal fucking year. Every fiscal fucking year, the deficit reduces to zero and starts over. And it becomes, I mean, what the fuck are you going to get rid of? Just wait 12 months, Bernie. It'll disappear on its own. Trust me.
Hyde, Mr. Hyde even sitting there going, is it a serious problem? As in, yes. As in, hell yes. And then you've got Beck. You've got Beck. Okay, Mr. Beck. Okay, Glenn, B-E-C-K-K-K, right?
Yeah,
sitting there going, the national debt is epic. And then you've got John Boehner going, it is near a moral crisis. Then you've got Paul Ryan going, it's a crisis. It's a crisis. And you got each one of them, man by man, by woman, Nancy Pelosi and the whole gang of fools up there. You know, and so it's like what I find ironic and rather humorous, to be fair, is so-called revolutionaries. Fuck the system, fuck the establishment, man. They're just a bunch of establishment, right? They're sitting there parroting the same nonsense from the establishment. The same bullshit you hear on Fox News, these people are sitting there parroting. The same bullshit you hear on CNN and you still hear on MSNBC and you hear on all these crank networks. Yeah. The same bullshit is what you hear them repeat over and over and over again. And Stephanie Kelton's 2-minute video, for those of you who understand what a joke the national debt is And for those of you who understand how absolutely ridiculous it is when anyone ever says, we got to reduce the deficit. If you hear that, you know immediately you're listening to someone who is either pandering to politics or doesn't know economics, or both. It's an ABC thing right there. But do watch that, because this is the reason folks will throw at you why we can't have a federal job program.
We can't have a federal job guarantee, Steve. We cannot possibly have, there's that word can't, we can't have green energy, we can't have sustainable output, we can't have anything. We can't have student debt relief, nothing. And we can't have infrastructure. You know why? Because the savings accounts at the Federal Reserve are too large. And they've got to be paid off. Someone has to figure out how to pay off the savings accounts. It's just so damn stupid. Hey, I put my, you know what? I got a Discover card, and they offer this high interest savings account, pays 1%. So I put $500 in there to open a savings account at Discover. Now I got to figure out a way to pay it off. Who the fuck pays off the savings account? I mean, seriously, let's just get real, all right? God.
Well, okay. So let's talk about one thing though that I don't think we adequately touched on before we get too deep, and that is the concept of automatic stabilizers. And how automatic stabilizers work not only with a job guarantee, but all forms of social safety net. I mean, bottom line, how do they explain the activity of an automatic stabilizer within the job guarantee?
Well, an automatic stabilizer, a sophisticated nation will deploy some types of mechanisms that create a floor in consumer spending. In the U.S., 3 of those are welfare, SNAP, unemployment insurance. Now, understand me here clearly. With a situation of full employment deliberately in absentia, all right, because governments refuse to deficit spend for that purpose, welfare, SNAP, and unemployment insurance are extremely vital, although they're inefficient, you see. You see, because we refuse to provide a job to all who are willing and able to work at a decent wage, we have to at least do something to prevent a large collapse in consumer spending, right? So in other words, if we're going to dedicate ourselves to promoting inefficiency, we'll have to resort to less efficient methods in order to maintain that inefficiency, excuse me. Right? So welfare, SNAP, and unemployment insurance are necessary precisely because we choose to maintain unemployment and supposedly fight inflation, to supposedly fight inflation. We also deliberately maintain low-wage environments to drive GDP to the business leader, giving him a helping hand, and to expand private debt to self-production, thus giving the financial sector a helping hand, with profits. But none of this is necessary. All of it is highly inefficient, and at some point, it will result in a collapse in consumer spending. And when that happens, workers are laid off, unemployment insurance, unemployment rises, excuse me, and the unemployed turn to government and apply for unemployment insurance, right? Or things like SNAP, welfare. All right, now when they do that, when the claims rise, all right, then the federal deficit automatically rises with that because there's more people applying for benefits, okay? So that's an automatic stabilizer there, right? Okay, so dollars are spent into existence and given to beneficiaries, all right? And they spend those dollars, thus guaranteeing some level of spending, and the economy will continue. A floor in spending is created. So when we consider SNAP, this creates a floor in consumer spending on food through which spending will not fall. All right? This means that as consumers continue to spend on food in a downturn, people employed at supermarkets won't lose their jobs, thus, they won't lose their jobs, thus making the downturn worse. So, what I'm trying to say here. So if you cut the automatic stabilizers in a downturn, you will only increase unemployment and you will only make the downturn worse. So that is something that people need to get through their heads. SNAP recipients are employed, meaning they're used by the government to protect consumer spending on food. The pay is quite low, and they're only allowed to spend their pay on food. So shitty job, but at least the people can fucking eat, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So if you want to work, so if, like for instance, if you work in grocery, whether a stocker or a manager or even a produce buyer, the so-called poor moochers that you hear on telly, they call them moochers. These poor moochers on SNAP are actually working to protect your jobs, and the compensation for doing so is utterly pathetic. Okay, it's extremely low. You should thank a SNAP recipient, not bash a SNAP recipient. Because as long as we're determined not to have full employment, the majority of SNAP recipients are not to blame for needing food assistance. And as long as we're determined to cut SNAP spending as well, one day, your public support for slashing this particular automatic stabilizer might land you yourself in the unemployment line.
Been there, done.
So the job guarantee is the ultimate automatic stabilizer, the ultimate one, the big one. It's more powerful than any of the others. It's far more efficient. It's far more effective than the others we employ. It achieves full employment and maintains it in perpetuity through automatic deficit management. The federal deficit literally automatically adjusts, without help from Congress, to the appropriate level necessary to maintain full employment. So as workers become unemployed in a downturn, they enter the job guarantee pool. All right? There are more workers for the government to pay now, and so the deficit automatically increases as those workers enter the pool. And in an economic expansion, workers leave the pool for higher private sector pay. So thus there are fewer workers for the government to pay, and so the deficit automatically reduces. Okay? It's real simple to understand.
This right here is basic, so everybody can tie it into their schooling. This is basically counter-cyclical spending.
Right.
Means is counter-cyclical spending on a automatic ticker without having to worry about Congress screwing it up. That's a beautiful thing.
The government works on a counter-cyclical manner to, the motions of the private sector. So when the private sector takes a downturn, the government acts as a stabilizer and goes the opposite direction. So if the economy takes a nosedive, the government spending will then increase. And if the economy is going into an expansion, government spending will, go down. It's counter-cyclical behavior, you see.
It's interesting. I want to say something so people understand. You and I in particular, you came up with this. So I want to give proper credit where credit is due. But MMT equals hope. Okay.
Genuine hope.
For those,
not just hope, genuine hope.
Genuine hope, like literal, like this is doable, man. Okay. Right. And I'm sympathetic to this but moment. I don't agree with it, but I'm sympathetic to it. And the but moment comes in where they say, yeah, but we don't have fair elections. We don't have fair elections. So
why don't you have fair elections?
Well,
why don't we ask the question before we talk about we don't have fair elections? That should be number one. Why don't you ask ourselves why we don't have fair elections in the first place? Again, back in the 1970s, we ended policies of full employment. Neoliberalism took over. We had union busting. We had wage suppression. This is going to continue on. Continues through the 80s. People get poorer. The economy gets worse. It continues to get worse. And the rich get richer. And why? Because we are now redistributing GDP to the rich, to capital. Why are we doing it? How are we doing it? Because productivity is here and the real wage is down here. And that gap represents national income that's shifting to the rich. Then on top of that, we give them a tax cut and say, keep more of what you stole. And they keep buying politicians and more favors until finally you get to the point where the people are fucking fed up with everything and it looks like they're going to become unsettled. So the rich people take all this money that they've made over the years. They buy the little neoliberal politicians, and the little neoliberal politicians ensure that the elections are fucking rigged. Why? Because you don't care about economics. You're not thinking. You're not putting it in perspective. The only way to avoid this rigged election system now will be the opposite direction. You're going to have you're going to have a critical mass of people that are willing to take to the streets and say, here, we're going to vote, and we're not going to vote for anyone who tells us that the federal government is broke by nature. We're not going to vote for people who tell us that the national debt's a real debt. We're not going to vote for people or anyone who says we can't do that because we have to tax the rich to afford it. Anyone who says that, we're not voting for them. And if we run our own candidates and we vote for them, and there's clearly something wrong in the elections numbers, and it's clear that some hanky-panky has been going on, then the people will go to Washington and they will reverse this process by telling people revolution.
Okay, so Ellis, let's talk about that for just a second, okay? Yeah. So we have watched the primaries where Bernie Sanders got hosed.
Yeah.
And more importantly, I don't even care about Bernie getting hosed. I care about the voters getting hosed, because every voter, regardless of whether or not the Democratic Party is a private company, blah, 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 there's a good fraud lawsuit going on right now. Thank you, Jared Beck and wife, Elizabeth Beck. But reality is this. I don't care. I mean, I do care. So I don't want to be wrong here. I don't want people to take me wrong. But I don't care if we have fair elections right now. If we take to the streets, the pitchforks and the torches will make people serve our needs. I'm telling you right now, Richard Nixon, I will use this thing until the cows come home. Richard Nixon did not want to create the EPA, but damn it if he didn't do it. Okay? Damn it if he didn't do it, and it was because the people demanded it. And you know what? I guarantee you this. The elections were probably just as FUBAR back then as well. Okay? Now we have these electronic elections, whatever. Bottom line, doesn't matter. If you want something and you need it and you know it needs to be done, if we get rid of the bullshit and we go for it and we stop allowing people to sideline us with orphan politics, as Ellis would say, if we focus on the unifying message of MMT and focus not just on MMT, forget MMT, economic justice, if we make that our goal here, and MMT is the unifying underlying there, so you don't have to be chasing taxes to pay for shit. You don't have to be chasing a bunch of sideline issues. You stay narrow and focused. We win. We win bigly, even with the election system FUBAR.
Right. We need a new left. We need a new left, okay? And like I said in a post last week, I think it was last week or maybe a week before, I said that we need a new left. And what it has to do, what it has to be is a package deal that includes every single issue that the old ineffective left holds dear, with MMT at the core. So this means that you could be an animal rights activist and that's your main concern, right? But if you understand the economics and you're willing to unify around that, yes, because there's no way to save these animals. There's no way to save the environment. There's no way to do any of these things unless we get the economics right. If we understand that, we can unify and we can do our thing. We can get out there, organize, and be effective against neoliberalism and defeat it, all right? But again, it can't be a national thing either. It has to be an international thing. We cannot recognize national borders anymore in this context, in the fight against neoliberalism, because neoliberalism doesn't recognize national borders itself, all right? But when it comes to currency, I recognize national borders. I recognize them. But when it comes to a movement of progressive change, of a new left that's strong and organized and can destroy neoliberalism once and for all, it has to be international and it cannot recognize national borders. You have to be a citizen of every nation. So the moment, I've said this before too, and it caused a few light bulbs to go on in some people's heads. Other people, they sat back and said, "Whoa, that's deep," when it's really not that deep. But the truth is that once you understand MMT, the fundamentals, the basic fundamentals of it, and the light bulbs go on in your head, the lives of people in Greece are your responsibility now, because you know what needs to be done. You know what must be done. Okay, exit, reclaim the drachma, move forward. You know, the lives of people in the UK, of the 7 years of austerity here, They are now your responsibility. People all over the world are your responsibility now. Okay? So it's an international thing. You're a citizen of the world. Act like it.
Amen. All right, Ellis. So I guess on that note, we're at this point now where it's probably up to us to put a bow on this turkey. What is it that you think the people that claim to be activists, that want to be activists, both in the Green Party, the unaffiliated, etc., what is it that they can do today to start making the job guarantee something that is part of our common vernacular so that it starts gaining mind share and people start really understanding how important this is?
Well, like I said, they got to get rid of this trade-off thing. They got to be willing. They got to be brave enough. How about that? That's a good word. They got to be brave enough to let it go.
Oh, for God's sake.
And no longer believe. Just let's not believe in it anymore because it's not true. Okay? The job guarantee itself vacates the Phillips curve. Remember what I said? It makes it obsolete. It makes the trade-off from the Phillips curve obsolete. What activists should know about the job guarantee itself and how it does this is the job guarantee pays a fixed minimum wage, and that wage sets a wage price floor in the economy, just like SNAP sets a floor in consumer spending. Okay, but it's a price anchor. So when the economy undergoes expansion, the job guarantee wage doesn't compete with market wages. In other words, the job guarantee fixed wage does not go up. Okay, it remains anchored, and involuntary unemployment is abolished, and all that will remain, as far as unemployment is concerned, is what we call frictional and wait unemployment. All right, wait unemployment being when a person can financially afford to wait out a term of unemployment until a job in his or her field becomes available. That's what that meant. So for the highly skilled, highly educated worker, there's a disincentive to take on a job guarantee job, right? So I think I did in the beginning, we mentioned, I want to make this point because it's very important. I have to remember what I was going to say. I hate it when this happens. You know, you see a comment go by, and then all of a sudden, who am I? Where am I? You know, I can't remember who I am. You know, whoa, what a weird comment that wasn't. No, wait, where was I? No, let me see, where was it? For the wage pressures. The wage pressures that I talked about, where they build up between different groups of labor. The abolishment of involuntary unemployment through the job guarantee reduces these pressures precisely because wait and frictional unemployment will discipline these pressures. Okay? So that's not a concern anymore. All right? So we just sort of shove that away. Increased aggregate demand results in increased demand for labor to help meet increased production demands. And so the market will need to hire from the job guarantee pool, which you can do by simply paying higher than a JG wage to entice workers out. The expansion itself, though, does not cause inflationary pressures because the spending is absorbed, like I said, by the economy in the form of increased output. In other words, business will increase its sales by increasing its production rather than resort to price markups, you see, to increase its profits, excuse me. So what if the private sector, and this is a question I get all the time from activists, you know, progressive, what if the private sector does undergo like a wage price spiral and inflationary pressures rise, like the Phillips curve says, you know, the trade-off, then the government will adjust fiscal policy, okay, to reduce aggregate demand. But the affected workers will seamlessly transfer out of the private sector and into what? The job guarantee pool where they remain employed, and inflationary pressures in the private sector are now attenuated. The job guarantee pops a hole open in the curve, in the Phillips curve there, and workers vacate that curve by entering the job guarantee pool. In other words, there is no trade-off between unemployment and inflation. Therefore, the job guarantee renders this concern obsolete. Out of the way, done, finished. So why is this important to both the economy and MMT? This is something that a standalone basic income cannot do. All right? It has no stabilization effect. It has no inflation control mechanism. It leaves the Nauru economy in place. It's just pure status quo. The lot of it. The job guarantee, however, is an automatic stabilizer that we actually install into the economy, which effectively deals with inflation and abolishes involuntary unemployment. Okay? So it fundamentally changes the economy. A basic income doesn't not. It doesn't do anything. So a job guarantee is an actual mechanism. A standalone basic income is not. It's just a handout, if you will, that allows consumers to spend more. It doesn't change anything about the economy, right? It leaves everything neoliberal and therefore everything wrong with the economy in place and simply works to transfer income upward to the so-called middle class. That's what happens. The poorest people who get the basic income spend, and what happens is they're still in the same situation they were beforehand. They still got to take a low-wage underemployment job, right? But these people who have more discretionary income, remember Obama talked about middle class? What do they do with their basic income? They lodge it in the bank. It's an upward income distribution to the middle class. No wonder middle-class individuals adore the idea. Okay, and the business leader's going to love it too, because now, if the government pays a small basic income of say $500, $600, $700 a month, maybe $1,000, okay, you get that, but you still don't have enough to live on, right? So you still have to get that part-time, low-wage job that normally you wouldn't consider, but now you will. So guess what? You take that job, because you just need part-time work. And guess what happens? The government pays you the half of a full-time wage. That's all it is. The basic income guarantee turns out to be government picking up the business leader's tab for not paying a full-time wage. So if you were paying a full-time wage, being paid a full-time wage, it would be X, this amount here, and the business leader would be paying you that. But the business leader gets to do something wonderful. He just gets to pay you half of it, and the government will pick up the other half of the full-time wage. That in itself is disgusting, all right? You're also forced to work in deplorable conditions for little pay just to still get by, all right? And on top of that, when you go out and spend your basic income and your wage, guess what? The business leader gets both of them. Well, that's brilliant. That doesn't do anything for anybody. But what we're talking about here is a standalone proposal, whereas just basic income, the hell with the job guarantee, the robots are coming. Okay, the job guarantee actually accelerates automation. All right, I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. All right, there are plenty of drudge jobs and crappy, shitty, junky fucking jobs that robots can quite easily do. More power to them. Let them do that. Let us move on. Let us evolve and do things that serve one another and create sustainable output through these efforts, all right? Because I'm going to tell you this right now. There's some jobs that robots can't do, all right? So until C-3PO comes, you're not going to win this argument with me. Look, you got a big orange robotic arm and it's sitting on the beach in Florida, okay? And it has a little speaker on it, and it says, it's warning, do not molest the sea oats. Okay, so you go and you molest the sea oats anyway. Warning, come within reach of my claw so that I may apprehend you. I mean, really, what are you going to do? Is he going to come after you on wheels? You know, what? Come on. You know, police officers, fire brigade. You've got so many jobs that humans still have to do, okay? But one thing that humans have to do is learn to serve themselves, and that's what the job guarantee is all about. Local, community, public purpose service jobs, making communities better and being paid a living minimum wage, which will eradicate low-wage producers because they'll refuse to pay it. Look, Steve, I'm going to say something to close here. It's really short and very simple. Stop thinking about wages in terms of like the minimum wage, in terms of, oh, this is a necessity, this is an economic, this is a financial thing, this is a very, very difficult thing to afford. Stop thinking that way. Stop thinking that way completely. you look at the minimum wage as a social tool, because that's what it fucking is. Whatever you decide it must be, that's what it will be. And the businesses who want to stay in business and continue to operate in this country will pay that job guarantee wage. So if we set the job guarantee wage, I'm just saying, to satisfy these high wage people, we set the set the job guarantee wage at $20 an hour in the US. Okay, this basically means that every business, that's the floor. So every business in the US will have to pay at least $20 an hour. All right, they will have to do that. The ones who choose not to pay such good wages will have to leave. So good for them. Get the fuck out of my country. Yeah. I mean, what's not to like here? But the important thing is here is hopefully you can understand why you can't separate the job guarantee from MMT in this respect. Because it's integral. It's intrinsic to MMT. Because you need this. It must be. Otherwise, you know, you're not doing anything for the economy. It's vital. It's vital that we get past this stupid trade-off thing, because it's not necessary. We can have full employment tomorrow. Full employment, I mean, not the kind that Paul Krugman talks about. I'm talking about real full employment, where everyone who wants a job can find one at a decent wage, okay? We can start that tomorrow and have the job guarantee in place and up and running in 12 fucking months.
I want to say something real quick for those people that are not familiar with this terminology and have not really heard about the job guarantee before.
Did I say something confusing?
No, not at all. But we did something that I think that I understand why it would come up, and I want to make sure before we close that I address this. First of all, there are many flavors of the federal job guarantee floated around out there. Some have a more conservative view as a transitional job, and it's really just this buffer stock, and it's just very temporary, et cetera. It's meant for low-skilled type individuals. And then you've got other folks that have taken a more robust approach to public purpose and reviewing this as an opportunity for people that may not ever want to get off the job guarantee. It's voluntary, so they can choose to stay there until they find what they want in the private sector, or they can choose not to go at all. They can just choose to stay there, or they can choose not to get it at all and just be unemployed at home. But the thing that I want to make sure we understand is that the point of all this is that the local communities will determine what their needs are, what they value. Right. And then you can shop local communities. You will never be stuck in Flint, Michigan. Again, my favorite thing that Ellis ever taught me was the fact that the job guarantee provides instant mobility to people that have been destitute in generational poverty, trapped in very unenviable places without hope of ever getting a job, like Flint, Michigan, and other areas that have been destitute and decimated by capital flight, as you will.
There's no such thing as capital flight with a flexible currency arrangement. What is it? What is it? Is this capital flight? Capital flight does not apply to the US dollar or the British pound or the Australian.
But anyway,
it's a fixed exchange regime thing. It's particular to fixed exchange regimes.
The corporate flight, because of
flee, get out of the country, go. I'll spend.
Government is not backfilling. Our government is not backfilling. It's not doing its job.
Let the capitalists flee. Go on, get out, go. Leave my country, and my government will then spend to access the productive capacity with its own currency. And you can go straight to fucking hell. Nothing bad is going on. Capital flight, first of all, what's even silly about that, even trying to apply it to the type of currency that we have today and the flexible currency arrangement that we have, the silliness is that the majority of this productive capital, like factories and whatnot, these things are fixed. It's very hard to just tomorrow pack up and flee. You've got assets everywhere. You've got to do something about that. But the fact still remains, this is a thing relative to the fixed exchange regimes. And every time I hear some neo-Keynesian or some neoclassicist especially talk, capital flight, I just I just bang my head against the
It's
ground and
infuriating.
say, "Kill me, please."
It's
I can't
infuriating.
hear this for 20-some years. The capital flight. Capital flight doesn't fucking apply.
Not at all. Mosley gave us a great quote earlier where he basically said exactly what you just.
What, you get stuck? Looks like Steve froze. My God. Well, Steve's gone. No one knows where he is. He went off where your taxes go, into oblivion. But to close off about this capital flight thing, he was getting ready to make a point about Warren Mosley, was interested in hearing about it, and then the damn thing froze up. But capital flight, people, please listen. Yes, Blairites. That's exactly what happened. The Blairites did this. Capital flight does not apply to the US, to Canada, to the UK, to Japan, to Australia, okay? Doesn't. This is a fixed exchange thing. It's a fixed exchange regime thing, okay? Where capital will pick up and leave, and the government's kind of screwed, okay? We don't have that problem. If capital today decided to get up and walk out of the country and flee, the US government could easily just spend to acquire all the productive capacity, hire the people necessary, and begin production, or sell it off to someone, to seize it and sell it off to someone who's willing to produce. In the meantime, I have a job guarantee and do X, Y, and Z. All right? This is all nonsense. All right? So I'd encourage you guys not to listen to that crap. Well, anyway, since Steve has gone off into oblivion, and I don't know if he's ever coming back, it's probably going to be good night from me. And I'll be posting tomorrow, as I always do. Okay? All right. So you guys have a great night. And I'll say good night from Steve as well. All right. Have a great evening and a great tomorrow. Bye-bye.